So I will just start a little of how we usually think about design, and especially fashion. Usually we think that fashion design is done by this great auteur or this great designer, and that's what we also have design schools too. We educate these people not only in the crafts, but also to grow big egos that is somehow in relation to the zeitgeist, and somehow they understand what we really want much better than we do. That is why we want to have what they offer us. So there's a very interesting exchange here, but it also is interpassive in a sense, because we are supposed to trust these people, or these great minds. And it's interesting in a year, the Darwin year, that we can imagine that actually the design, the tree of life and how life evolves. And we have this idea that life, it somehow just started in this primordial soup. Lightning came, or there was intelligent design, or whatever there was, something started this, gave birth to life, and that's a wonderful miracle. And of course we want to be there. We are the designers, the source of life, the holy, the finger, So there's nobody who believes more in intelligent design than perhaps designers in the design community, because we all want to be that source of life. So mainly then, hacking is about kind of this distinction that we have grown so tight in the world of, all through modernism, but especially in the world of design, that between the auteur and the audience and the producer and the consumer, that there is almost a kind of a watertight wall between these two worlds. And we are taking for granted that this innovator, this designer, usually a male in white coat in his lab or something, he is there producing things, mass producing, and we are happy consumers on the other side who just, oh, thank you, providing us with these things. And also we want, especially in the world of art and things like that, we think that this inventor, he goes up on his chamber and just, he suffers a little up there, and oh my God, I have to come up with this, and I'm not inspired by anyone, of course, it just kind of struck me with lightning, this is the ideas that we grow. But coming down back to fashion, and is ready to wear, is off the hanger, that type of fashion, is it the only way we can today consume fashion, or the only interface we have? If we love fashion, if I'm a fashionista and I just love fashion, is it the only way I can get into this world? I have to buy the things ready-made. So also, when we talk about democratization of design, is this what we talk about democratization? Is this, when our great guru starts mass-producing a cheaper collection, is that we can start, everyone can now be happy? But it's also this, it strikes back on us. It's also a little dangerous, because before I had this feeling that, well, I can never afford a Chanel garment, so I'm not playing in their league anyway. I'm allowed to look bad and just be awful. But now suddenly, H&M is providing me the 30-pound version of this, and suddenly it comes back to me, oh my God, why am I not looking as good as... You know how this broke up? But you know how this collaboration broke up between H&M, and in Sweden there was this big headlines on the newspapers, there's a breakup between Carl and H&M, and everyone was, oh my God, what's happening? Poor Carl and poor H&M. And what had happened? H&M had made 2 big sizes. Fat people could wear Carl's things. And Carl was very upset. I'm not working for those people, but H&M, social democracy, and think, we work for everyone. So it's almost too perfect, the split, both kind of regain their core values of their business, even though they had a kind of contemporary alliance for a while. So it's really interesting. But whatever. Okay, we should. But is this democratization of design, or can there be other ways? And if we don't like this, if we don't think this is enough, what are we going to do? Or what do we usually do? Well, usually our first step is that we say, no, boycott. I'm not going to take part of your illusion. I'm not part of your system. Fashion is an illusion. We don't really believe that, do we? We have read our French theorists, and, it's all, we're not fooled by those. So we start boycotting or something like that. Or if we're really smart and a little designer, like we go out and we start subvertising. We go down in the tube and we paste up, for example, like these German activists who put up the Photoshop palettes to show how modified all these pictures are. So they're kind of revealing that it's all an illusion. And if we're really innovative, like Sux, also a German activist, we kind of create this type of really subvertise to show, well, H&M is only a virus of the mind or something like that. But then also you become a little suspicious, because isn't this actually this type of guerrilla marketing H&M would love to have? Isn't this creating that extra little kind of dangerous energy to H&M that they just want to, they could pay anything to have? So who is actually subvertising who? And that's really a big problem in how do we, could there be other ways of if we don't agree with what's happening in the system, if we don't want to be passive? So that's where I'm interested in hacking, because I think there's some really interesting way of engagement there. And in the world of computers, they're usually a split, or what we usually think about hacking is usually what they call crackers. Crackers are the ones who destroy things, and hackers are the ones who build things. So crackers are the ones who want to steal your bank account and put viruses in your computer, and hackers are the ones who do nice plugins that you just like to use and are smart and helpful or whatever. So we have to start making just that little distinction, that I'm not talking about kind of destroying the system. It's not about subversion. It's not about tearing down fashion. It's more about, okay, how do we plug in? How do we somehow modify the system in a more desirable way? And an interesting slogan is from the American Make magazine. If you can't open it, you don't own it. So how do we create things that are more hackable in a sense? How do we, if I love to engage with what I have, why am I not allowed to break the warranty and things? Perhaps that's really what I want. I want some more holes for the screws. I want to open my iPod and just to see what's in there and things like that, but I'm not really allowed. And yeah, so we have to think about hacking is this somehow engaging in these things. And I will just show you some examples that has inspired me a lot, which I think are typical examples of this. And one could be from circuit bending. So this is Brian Duffy here from Britain, who has his modified toy orchestra. And before his shows, I attended one in Rotterdam, then he had a video projection and showed how he broke up these old toys to kind of get more noises out of these toys. And he licked his finger and drew it over the old circuit board of this 1980 little keyboard, and he says, and just little noises came out of there, and so, oh, is this going to be good music? And then suddenly out came, we'll go back a little. On the outside there is a small demo button, and it's placed this Wham song, Wake Me Up Before You Go. It was something like that. But then as he opened it up and drew his finger over the circuit board, out came another song that didn't have a button. So apparently the engineers had put a lot more things into the chip than was actually on the interface, on the outside of the keyboard. And then he kind of recircuited that and put extra buttons on outside of this keyboard to kind of show that, oh, well, we can actually, out of this everyday toy, we can get a lot more interesting noises and things that are actually not only noise, not kind of some kind of Schön Stockhausen piece, but really some really nice things that could come out of there. So, and he said, I'm actually liberating more potential out of this toy than was in there before. So he meant that, circuit bending is a form of kind of liberation of hidden potentials in everyday things. And to me, I thought this could be interesting, but this is still very material. So I started looking in my research about other forms of areas where I thought activism could be applied. And fan fiction has long fascinated me. Fan fiction is these very dedicated fans who have seen the show several times, and they think, there's something more in this story. I need to write my own episodes and stuff like that. And so instead of thinking, I should be like Dostoevsky, I should go up on the attic and sit there and write another War and Peace 600 pages or something like that, it's much more about writing inside the already existing narrative. And usually fan fiction is written about where there is some form of dissonance in the story. So, for example, for the fans of Star Trek, it has been about the relation between Captain Kirk and Spock. Really, there are things happening here which is a little bit more than what we see on the television set. So, especially where there's one episode called Amok Time from the end of the 60s where Spock gets the Vulcan fever, so he has to go back to his planet to mate, and there's all these kind of family troubles and stuff like that, and he doesn't mate, but Captain Kirk is beamed down on the planet and somehow saves him. But there is no mating. but he's somehow saved. And nobody knows really what happened. So all the fans, of course, they started kind of fantasizing and creating fiction about all these stories that, of course, were little kind of hidden in this story. And they say, well, I mean, some fans say, oh my God, you're raping my heroes, what are you doing? But others say, no, I mean, this is hidden inside the story. We're liberating what actually perhaps the author wanted to write, but as he wouldn't get it published because of American family values and TV time and all these kind of things. So he means, I mean, we actually revealing what is the potential of this story. And we as fans, we can take that power because we actually know this story much better, that we have seen it hundreds of times. I mean, who should know these things other than us, of course? So this is really interesting. I mean, and of course, some people say then, oh, do you do this because you want to subvert this story? But the people do this because they love Star Trek, not because they hate it. They don't want to destroy Star Trek or kind of tear it down and show, oh, it's an illusion, or don't be fooled, don't buy those movies. No, it's because, I mean, we have seen all those episodes, and we want to contribute somewhere. We want to use all these skills and energies and our knowledge to this. So, but how does this relate to fashion? Can we somehow learn a little, can we start relating this to fashion? And fashion, we can say, fashion is also some form of mythical system. It also has these big authors who create big universes, like Star Trek or Star Wars, you know, these big authors of George Lucas or whatever. They create a form of a whole world that we somehow come into. And that's, I mean, there's a lot of sociology who actually compare religion and fashion and mean that fashion is a sort of, it's replacing religious rituals. So there's a lot of, we can actually compare perhaps the big designers with the big patriarchs of the church, and they build their own temples. So there's a lot of, I mean, the sociology is writing about, I mean, the temple as a form of, I mean, the shopping mall as a form of temple of consumption and so on. So if we want to organize more of this type of interventionist way of engaging with this fashion myth, perhaps we can learn from liberation theology in Latin America. What's interesting there is that, I mean, coming from a kind of Marxist tradition, they would say, oh, religion is an opium for the people. You shouldn't be, first we have to overcome our religious illusions, and then we can engage in social struggle or whatever. And it's been very, very, very tricky about guerrillas and who's engaged with whom and whatever. But what's interesting there still is that, no, we don't have to overcome this illusion. We can use faith as a tool for social change. So we can somehow engage with, we can look at religion as a form, as an energy we can use in our social struggles. And if we want to organize this, it's interesting to look at how Leonardo Boff, or one of these theologists, start looking at the kind of the traditional, to the left there you have the kind of the traditional top-down structure of the church, which has, I mean, especially in Catholicism, you know, God and Christ comes down to the Pope, and Pope, and then there has to be a new form of church which is based on the base communities where we share the Spirit, and much more about everyone can have the right to interpret the Holy Scriptures and these kind of things. And coming from the world of computers, you suddenly, isn't this exactly what kind of Windows versus Linux is about? Isn't this exactly what he's talking about there? I mean, basically, we can engage and share the code and all these kinds of things. So perhaps we can actually talk about some open source engagement with myth and with creation in a sense. So Eric Raymond in his book has been writing about, I mean, the cathedral and the bazaar. I mean, the cathedral being these top-down structures of Windows or Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever, these kind of classical systems of the army or the general in the top, or Bill Gates or whatever who's in there, or Karl Lagerfeld in the top, to a more kind of what could be the parallel system, which is much more flat and based on bazaar perspective. So this has been what I've been engaged with in my self-passage works, and I will just very, very shortly explain how I look at those. I started out doing, like many designers do, I mean, recycling these garments that are dying in the back of your wardrobe somehow, and some people asked, oh, they look nice, how did you do those? And I started publishing kind of online small recipes or cookbooks, how to remake your clothes. I was trying to create, I mean, more tools for engagement, and kind of imagine how could you educate designers then, so instead of only making ready-made things that people should buy ready-made, how could you kind of make them instead think that, okay, perhaps I can make a cookbook, perhaps I can make an interface, create some other thing so people can kind of engage with what I do. So instead of only having an object that people buy, could there be other ways for engaging people? So and as part of my PhD, I ran a project called Hackers and Haute-couture Heretics, an exhibition in Istanbul. in a gallery along Istiklal Caddesi, a very pedestrian street in Istanbul. And there I invited 8 different design groups to, during 6 weeks, do a lot of different projects. I mean, there was open space. When we were 9 hours a day, it was open for people to just come in and remake clothes, basically. So, I mean, there were all forms of artists working with remaking clothes, but also, I mean, Junkie Styling here from London and so on that runs a business on remaking men's suits. And I will just talk very shortly about some of these projects that happened during this exhibition. And one, we started out with the Swaprama, which is a kind of an open source concept from Wendy Tremaine, an American artist and activist. And the Swaprama is a very simple, it's a clothes swap, but I mean, you come there, your entrance ticket is a bag of clothes, and you put them in a big pile, so all these clothes that are somehow dead from the fashion point of view, they can be reused into or shared, but also in the next room there's a lot of sewing machines and designers who help you to remake these clothes. But also, so during the night, you kind of, oh, what can I do with these? And there's a lot of designers to help you if you haven't been sewing and doing these things before. And you also meet a lot of other people. So it's almost like you're in some form of a design studio, but it's kind of a collective design studio. But we also invited, I mean, makeup artists and so on, and people could model their clothes in the night, because at 12 o'clock, you know, the time of the Cinderella, we had a catwalk where people came out and there was music and there were beer and bars and all these kind of things. So kind of reenacting a fashion event, trying to kind of produce the same energies that are there, but for the people who have been using or reusing these kind of decomposed stuff from their wardrobes that they have been sharing as a kind of as a raw material that they could, I mean, feel a little free to experiment with too. But it's also a way to kind of help people to engage with the craft of actually, oh my God, I've never been using a sewing machine before. So it becomes a very kind of a community event to help each other out. And one of the other artists who was there doing this exhibition was Jana Gonzalez, a Panamese artist, New York based. And she's having a project called Hacking Couture, where she also creates public workshops where people engage in trying to kind of understand fashion as really as a program and act as a hacker. So she means, let's imagine that the big designer is really a programmer who has the source code. They know what is the brand is about, but they don't share this code. They only share the program, actually. So how can we as users, some kind of reverse engineer, try to understand what is the source code that Carl actually has? So kind of can we enter the mind of Carl? Can we enter the history of Chanel to try to kind of liberate a little bit so more people could understand what is this source code? So she takes this task as, I mean, this endeavor as a programmer. So she creates these workshops where, okay, let's look at this as a program. How can we kind of look at the themes? How is Chanel used? What are the materials used? Kind of, how can we study all these books and all these the videos and everything that is out there? How can we really look at what all the materials are and so on? So we're doing our workshop in Istanbul. We used Gucci as an example, so we created a kind of a source code people could come with. I mean, we photocopied these images and put them up, so we kind of created a communal kind of mind map or a kind of a source code program of what is really all these components of Gucci. And then people brought their secondhand clothes in there to Guccify them. So they updated them in a kind of a Gucci way, but not making copies, but using the code, kind of recombining the code that we had found as a way to kind of energize these clothes. And Jana has, I mean, working with these often, so this is actually, she usually has a fashion photographer in the end to take pictures, to kind of take them back into becoming fashion pictures. These are from a Yves Saint Laurent workshop she had in the States. So it's much more about, and some say, oh, is this subversive too? What's interesting with this workshop is that people started seeing these brands differently. People thought, oh my God, Gucci is much more than just green and red and the double G and this kind of, or the G logo. Oh, it's much more. So actually, people raised an attention and actually got to love Gucci more by doing these copies in a sense. And I think or they weren't really copies. But I think it's really interesting that it's much more of a way of training a look more than only kind of subverting it or something. And then another artist working with this is Stephanie Suhuko, who was also there. And she has this, we can use internet, this new tool, to actually get what we want from the internet. So we can browse around on the internet and look at Net-a-Porter or whatever these sites are and find our it bags. We shouldn't deny that we want these items. Instead, we should download the images in low resolution and print them in size 1:1, and then crochet a low resolution copy pixel by pixel. So we have a low resolution Gucci bag. We get the real thing. So if on distance it will look like a Gucci bag, but also what we actually get is the skills to crochet. So instead of denying fashion, we use it as a carrot to engage with the craft. So actually, we can use this energy, we can kind of surf on the energy of fashion rather than try to say, oh, activism has to be to deny it. It's much more about how can we kind of engage with that. So she runs workshops with this too. So this is Gucci bags under construction. You have a small Gucci bag down there in the bottom and people learning to crochet. But it's also a little tricky. So she has small, manuals on the internet to kind of help people with more tricky patterns and so on, so they can easily engage with these and learn to crochet in a better way, because it can be quite tricky. But so it's interesting. I mean, fashion hacktivism, from my point of view, is not only about the engagement. It's not only about kind of opening the machine and learning and reverse engineering, but it's much more about kind of using this energy, this passion that is in fashion. But I mean, to somehow use that energy as a tool to bring further in crafts and help people to engage in other ways and spread knowledge about these things too. So we can just think about that. I mean, hacktivism is a big palette, almost a wunderkammer of all kind of modes of engagement, but it's all based on a kind of a love, in a sense. It's all based on trying to have the energies flowing, not at all about blocking it. So if you imagine a kind of an abstract machine or some form of diagram of what hacktivism is built out of, it's very much about trying to empower users and decentralize control, but it's not a threatening, it's not about rejecting that system, it's about using those energies and also educating perhaps a fashion designer, and I mean, from a sense of, metaphors of sports, in a sense, instead of a designer having to be a kind of a muscle pack that is going to kind of throw this shot put, isn't it called when you throw a metal ball as long as possible and you build a designer on steroids and you're going to be this huge shot put, oh, I'm going to be the one that throws the ball the longest. Perhaps we should instead also find designers that are much more surfers or hang gliders that works with these powers in a much more, interactive way. Instead of feeling that they have to be the source of all these energies and all these things, how can they kind of relate and give out these energies to others too? So that is what this fashion hacktivism has been about. So you will find more information at theselfplastic.org and so on. So thank you very much. Okay.